Before we begin, a brief note. This story covers an ongoing war. It is presented for news and educational purposes, avoids graphic imagery, and does not celebrate or encourage violence. Where numbers are discussed, they reflect the best publicly available reporting at the time and may change as new, independently verified information emerges. In the gray dawn of one of the hardest fought fronts in Europe, a rumble rolls into place. A hulking machine of American steel, firepower, and legacy stands on Ukrainian soil, ready for war. But the battlefield it enters is nothing like what it was built for. Drones hover, missiles streak, the earth shakes. What happens when one of the most advanced Western main battle tanks meets the unforgiving reality of modern warfare? In early 2024, the United States pledged to send 31 M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. That number appears in official assistance tallies from the US government. The State Department's running summary of security cooperation likewise lists 31 Abrams delivered as part of a broader package of Western armored vehicles. These were symbolically heavy machines designed in the Cold War to dominate Soviet-style armor, now earmarked for one of the most brutal land wars in recent memory. In 2025, another donor stepped in. Australia announced the transfer of 49 retired M1A1 tanks, and by July reported that the first tranche had arrived in Ukraine. Those details were confirmed in government releases and covered by international media. Which Ukrainian units actually took them? Open sources show the 47th Mechanized Brigade operating M1A1SA variants after first fielding Bradleys and Leopard 2s. Heavily footnoted public orders of battle reflect that shift, and multiple reporter write-ups followed the brigade through Avdiivka and Stepkov, where fighting was constant. By late summer 2025, a second unit entered the picture. The 425th Assault Regiment, known as Skala, publicly stated it had received Abrams and was fighting in the Pokrovsk sector. Defense reporters noted that until then, the Abrams were mainly with the 47th, which made Skala's reveal notable. From the moment those tanks rolled off transporters and into Ukrainian mud, the war tested every assumption. On paper, the Abrams brings a powerful 120mm gun, superb stabilization, and thermal sights that let crews find and hit targets at distance. The armor package is designed to keep crews alive even under heavy fire. A reputation earned over decades of service. Early Ukrainian footage and unit reports fit the doctrine. Abrams pushed under fire and used their optics and mobility to strike Russian positions when infantry fighting vehicles and artillery created windows to move. Then the battlefield changed the script. First-person view drones, loitering munitions, and top-attack anti-tank missiles made the air just above a tank as dangerous as the ground in front of it. In April 2024, Associated Press reporting cited U.S. officials who said Ukraine had pulled Abrams away from some frontline roles because drone saturation made open terrain too dangerous for maneuver. At that time, 5 of the 31 were reported destroyed. Subsequent coverage from major outlets and defense reporters reinforced the same point. Mass use of drones constrained movement and forced commanders to employ Abrams more carefully than planners had hoped. What about overall losses? Methodology matters here. The open source tracker Oryx only logs visually confirmed events, which means it provides a minimum, not a total. By late August 2025, the war zone summarized that at least 22 of the 31 US donated Abrams had been destroyed, captured, or abandoned in confirmed imagery. That figure is best read as a floor and likely undercounts the true total, because not every incident is photographed or published. Other outlets have carried higher estimates that suggest only a small number of the original 31 remained in full service at certain points in 2025. Those higher figures are not verified to the same standard and should be treated with caution until corroborated. What is not in dispute is the pattern. The most common killers have been drones and guided munitions rather than classic tank duels. Many incidents left crews alive because the protective design did its primary job. That human detail is not sensational, but it is central. Adaptation followed quickly and often came from the crews themselves. Ukrainian engineers and tankers added steel mesh and cage-like structures to disrupt drones approaching from above. They experimented with slat armor, improvised explosive plates to blunt shape-charged jets, and thermal camouflage nets to make targeting harder. Some crews use the tanks as protected gun platforms from covered positions to reduce exposure along open ground that drones watched constantly. None of this was in the original brochure. All of it was logical, fast, and battlefield-driven. This does not prove the Abrams was wrongly designed. It does show that a tank born for a world dominated by thermal gunners and attack helicopters is now living under a different sky. That is an informed interpretation based on field evidence rather than a laboratory conclusion. The human angle never left the turret. Inside every Abrams in Ukraine sit 4 people: commander, gunner, loader, driver. Interviews and unit notes describe the strange new soundtrack of armored war, the growl of a turbine engine, the clank of tracks, and above it the high-pitched whine of drones you cannot always see. Crews gave their vehicles names and painted them with slogans that combined hope and grit. When a tank took a hit and the crew climbed out, the machine was a loss, but the people were not. In a war of attrition, that distinction is ugly and real, and this channel will not show graphic imagery to make that point. Strategically, the Abrams had two jobs. On day one, it was a message that Washington would place top-tier machines behind Kyiv. The State Department's January 2025 Summary of Assistance lists the tank among many lines of support, and that variety is what keeps a modern army in the field. On day 100, it became a teacher. Complex logistics, specialized spare parts, and a turbine that consumes JP-8 or similar fuels at scale meant the Abrams required a serious sustainment tail. In a theater where roads are mined and depots are targeted, that tail is a vulnerability that must be managed. Analysts in Australia and Europe drew similar conclusions after watching Ukraine. The tank remains useful, but the package around it must include counter-drone systems, layered air defense, electronic warfare, and a logistics rhythm that can survive interruption. Now to the comparison that everyone asked for, the Abrams against the T-90M, the Leopard 2, and the Challenger 2. Side by side, Western tanks in their latest configurations are generally assessed by defense analysts to carry heavier passive armor and more advanced sensor suites than Russia's T-90M, though precise composite recipes are classified. Across expert commentary, the M1 A2 SEP series and the Leopard 2 A7 are often placed at the top for passive protection. That is an expert consensus rather than a single published data table. In Ukraine, the T-90M has proved lethal and, crucially, available in larger numbers. Russia can replace T-series hulls faster than the West can deliver fresh Western tanks, which matters in a prolonged campaign. That observation rests on consistent OSINT loss databases and mainstream reporting about attrition and replacement, while acknowledging that all such data has limits. Abrams versus Leopard 2 comes down to trade-offs more than absolutes. The Abrams turbine provides strong performance, but demands a robust fuel and maintenance ecosystem. The Leopard 2 uses a conventional diesel power pack that is simpler to support within European-style logistics chains. Long-standing comparisons frame it that way, with Abrams praised for armor and firepower and Leopard 2 for mobility and reliability. Those remain fair characterizations rather than laboratory measurements, and they align with how both have been employed in Ukraine. Challenger 2 is rarer in theater, which limits broad statistical comparison. It is known for excellent crew protection and its distinctive rifled gun. Yet, like all heavy tanks in Ukraine, it is vulnerable when caught by drones, mines, and top attack missiles. Expert discussions note that side armor thickness and weight distribution differ across these Western tanks. Survivability changes with angle, range, and context. That is a technical nuance, not a verdict on any one platform. One factor changed the league table in a way no single armor package could fix: drone density. Even the best tank struggles if its overhead protection is thin. U.S. Army leaders have been candid about this since observing Ukraine closely. Senior officials now speak about heavy tanks spending more time under cover and pushing forward only after local aerial threats are suppressed. That is not timidity, it is doctrine catching up with reality. There is also a training story that rarely makes headlines. Before any tank crosses a border, crews train abroad to integrate new systems, fire control, and maintenance. Ukrainian crews learned the Abrams on European ranges with US and allied instructors. Those courses compress what American tankers learn over years into weeks and months. It is an extraordinary ramp, and it means the first fights are part combat and part live test. As crews rotated home, they trained the next intake. That pipeline explains how a force goes from 0 Abrams to combat deployment without years of peacetime buildup. US releases about the Abrams decision and wider armor support have referenced that flow. Variants matter as well. Ukraine has fielded M1A1SA models rather than the latest M1A2SEPV3 that the US is procuring for itself. The older variant still brings serious optics, hunter-killer capability, and protection, but it lacks the very latest electronics and survivability upgrades. Viewers often ask about active protection systems, for example, Trophy. Integrating APS onto each hull, training crews to trust it, and sustaining it with spares is a programmatic task that takes time. That explanation draws on how APS has been implemented in other armies and should be taken as an informed assessment rather than an official doctrinal line. Repair and recovery deserve a clear look because they shape survivability counts. Public trackers generally log a tank as lost if it is visually confirmed destroyed, abandoned, or captured. Those lists do not fully capture quiet recoveries and depot rebuilds. Some Abrams damaged in spring 2024 reappeared months later after repair. That is why any single number on social media is a snapshot. The war zone's late August August 2025 summary of at least 22 U.S. donated Abrams lost is a minimum confirmed figure. It is not the final ledger, and it does not attempt to measure every repair or return to service. Treat higher circulating totals as unverified unless supported by independent evidence or official statements. Pull the camera back and the lesson becomes clearer. Heavy armor still matters. A tank delivers shock, protected firepower, and a psychological effect that lighter platforms cannot replicate. Tanks now operate inside a lattice of sensors, drones, and precision weapons that punish exposure. Australia's defense debate after watching Ukraine reached the same conclusion. Tanks are not obsolete, but they must be paired with counter-drone tools, short-range air defense, electronic warfare, strong infantry support, and the humble logistics that keep them fueled and fixed. So, where does that leave the Abrams story in Ukraine? It arrived with prestige, power, and promise. It fought in one of the most demanding environments of our time, and at times paid in steel. It forced adaptations that spread through the force, from cage armor to new tactics. It showed that even the most storied tank is not invincible, and that the people inside matter most. In a snow-muddy Donbass village, a Ukrainian tanker climbs down from a stricken hull. The machine is lost. The crew is alive. That is a quiet victory. A final recap, stated carefully and without sensationalism. U.S. sources confirm 31 Abrams delivered. Australia announced 49 more M1 A1s and reported the first arrivals in July 2025. Associated Press reporting in April 2024 said Ukraine temporarily pulled Abrams from some front roles due to heavy drone threats and cited 5 destroyed at that point. Visual confirmations compiled by open-source researchers and summarized by defense outlets counted at least 22 U.S. donated Abrams lost by late August 2025. These figures are evolving and represent minimums or time-bound snapshots. Treat any higher totals as unverified until there is independent confirmation. The age of the tank is not over, it is changing. The tanks that survive the next war will fight inside a system that protects them from above, keeps them supplied from behind, and commits them at the right moment. If the Abrams taught the world anything in Ukraine, it is that adaptation beats reputation. Those who cling to the last war's playbook will not be in the driver's seat for long.